Hey, work from homers, Adam Schroeder here. We love bringing you this podcast, and thousands of you have proven that it's been helpful for you. But since time and online storage space aren't free, Naresh and I wanted to come to you personally to ask for your financial support through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/workfromhomeshow and help support the show. And we appreciate your support at any amount you choose. That's patreon.com/workfromhomeshow. Thanks for your support. Let's get to the show.
Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schroeder. Today we have the Angry Therapist. Yes, that's his nickname. His name is John Kim. He's probably one of the internet's most renowned marriage and relationship therapists out there. He's a published writer, speaker, life coach, and co-founder of the Tat Lab and JRNI Coaching. He's a best-selling author of I Used to Be a Miserable An Everyman's Guide to a Meaningful Life. You know, I wish I read that book when I was a miserable in my probably my early mid 20s. Also the best-selling author of The Angry Therapist, a no BS guide to finding and living your own truth. And the new book, Single on Purpose, Redefine Everything, Find Yourself First. All three of these books are just so relevant to working from home, because working from home can be lonely, especially if you are single, and how to deal with all that. And then relationships. At the end of the day, we did an episode, New Year's 2021, about happiness, and the quality and quantity of your relationships are the number one predictor to happiness, according to Harvard research. So without further ado, John Kim, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate you using the word I was doing some radio stuff earlier, and they said I used to be a miserable duck. And I thought to myself, that's the children's book I wrote about the unhappy duck at one point.
Well, I'm assuming you didn't really write that children's book, but that would be a good book. That's a good idea.
That's the sequel. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start with why it's important for people to build better relationships with themselves, even if they're married with families. And I ask this because so many of your or really all your books focus on the self, focus on spirituality, and focusing on oneself. So what's your advice to people on building better relationships with themselves, whether they're single or they're married with families, multiple kids?
Yeah, I think it all starts there. You know, I think it's really hard to build a relationship, at least an honest relationship with someone else, if your relationship with yourself is poor, you know, and I think this is how relationships get lopsided. I think this is where people start to lose themselves in other people. So it all starts with you.
Yeah, and going back on that, do you have any research that backs that? Because one of the things a lot of people, they listen to these therapists, counselors, and they're like, oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Like, they're just making up stuff. So can you give us a little background on how you're getting your commentary and your philosophies?
Yeah, so I guess my research is my own life. So starting with that, but mostly helping I would say thousands in the last decade, being a therapist and listening to clients, their stories, where they struggle. And, you know, the common thread always is, their relationship with themselves. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about addiction or, relationships or, any singlehood, anything. If your relationship with yourself is not good, the ripple is unhealthy behavior, coping, running to your vices, all of that stuff.
How do you start the process of improving your relationship with yourself? Because, a lot of people, you can look and say, man, I talk horribly to myself. Like,
Yeah.
If I had a friend who talked to me like I talked to myself, I'd tell him to shove off. But, how do you start that process of, really improving your relationship with yourself?
Yeah, so I would say if your relationship with yourself was an engine, I think there's two pistons. And I think the first piston is the obvious, which is, self-care. It's the stuff that people talk about, self-care, treating yourself better, getting outside of your head and all of that stuff that is in the present and with your life. But the other piston I think that needs to start pumping, and one that I think people forget is an inner journey, meaning exploring how you're wired and why, which may take us into our past, our childhood, the way we were raised. And it doesn't mean to live there. It just means to explore like a detective. You really need to put a black light on how you think, investigate why you react instead of respond. A lot of stuff that we do is subconscious. A lot of stuff that we do is a knee jerk or from our upbringing, and until we explore that, it's hard to catch that. And if we're not catching that, then we're just scratching the surface and putting band-aids on things. So I think it takes both pistons pumping to really work on yourself.
I really agree with that, but I will say in my culture, so I'm born and raised American, but I'm Indian by culture, and I feel like our culture places a high value on what you just said, on exploring your own family background, who you are, where you come from, and also before you even get married. Again, in our culture, the concept of a love marriage and dating is brand new. So generally, people in India and like my parents' generation, it was arranged marriage. They met somebody that their parents found, and then they just got married like the next day. But they did all this kind of research and background and finding out who the other person is, where they come from, what their lineage is, what their background is, what the upbringing is. And I think that actually holds a lot of value. It gets a lot of flack in today's society. But as I see so many of my friends and even family members getting divorced and struggling in their marriages and relationships, I go back and I'm like, you know what? That actually, it seems like it works out pretty well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because what I like about that is they are picking someone for you that isn't just based on aesthetics and chemistry, and it's more than abs and a butt or pretty eyes, right? So they're making choices that they're pulling from a place that sometimes we don't pull from. Looking at the bigger picture, how someone is, their culture, where they come from, how they maneuver, all of that.
Can you talk a little bit about, you wrote an article about 3 reasons why being single is the new finding the one and redefining things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I write a lot, so I don't know what those 3 reasons were because I write blogs so much. But I don't like the word or the term "the one." I think it's misleading. I think it's a trap, right? And the only one is a person that you choose to love. So the whole idea that we only have one person that we're supposed to love, I think can be damaging. Yeah, and also if you feel like that term, the one that got away, if you believe that, then how can you be present in who you're choosing to love now if you believe that the person you're really supposed to be with is somewhere else, right? So I believe in the one that's in front of you, and whoever's in front of you isn't perfect, like you're not perfect, and to go into it by first connecting and working on yourself instead of pointing fingers and blaming and trying to control.
So you're not going to be writing any Hollywood movies about the one love? Is that what I hear?
Yeah, that's the reason why I think a lot of my clients fell into depression and hopelessness, and their love crossbows were cocked, and they're trying to find the one desperately. Is because of those Hollywood movies and the happily ever after, and the Prince Charming, and putting so much weight on finding quote unquote the one.
That was going to be my next question. I think it's terrible what Hollywood and in my culture, Bollywood does to create this, like you said, this one and only life passionate partner. And I know, I think our listeners and Adam know, I try to keep it real. I'm not a dour person, but that's why when I was a kid, I liked the movie Pocahontas, because at the end of the movie, it's not a happy ending. She loses the man who she loves, and you're just left. The movie ends, and it ends on a complete kind of tragedy. And I was
Right,
like, whoa,
right.
I've never seen a cartoon like this before. I actually like this. And there needs to be more movies like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much that we absorb through programming, through media, social media, movies, and then we are pulling from there without even knowing it, and we fall into depression because we're trying to, trace a blueprint that isn't even honest to us, but it's something that we accepted, before we could drive.
Do you find when it comes to like losing yourself in a relationship and really, losing yourself in the relationship, do you find if it skews towards one sex more than the other?
I don't know if it's a gender thing. I think it's different. I know as far as being single and the pressures to find someone, I think women struggle with it more because of the whole ticking clock and, if you want babies and all of that. And also because of our society, women are supposed to wait. They're not supposed to be assertive and go after what they want, which I think is unfair. But as far as in a relationship, I don't know if it's a gender thing. I think it's more of a human thing of us, generally speaking, not taking ownership, not reviewing how we're wired and where things come from.
In your experience, I'm not sure, because you go to Barnes and Noble and there's an entire section on relationships and marriage. So I don't know if I'm asking this question properly, but why is it that men need to be the ones making women happy, and they need to be the ones really just making them happy and leading the way? Well, more so just, why do they need to make them happy and not the other way around?
I think it depends on the culture. I think it depends on where you come from. I like me being Korean American. I was born in Korea but came here when I was 3, so I have one foot in that old school thinking of men, the machismo, and the women being more submissive and all of that, and then my other foot into this new picture of what a relationship can look like, and to stay away from that old Norman Rockwell painting and old beliefs and stuff that our parents might be passing down to us.
Do you have any kind of daily affirmation or daily practices that you do that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say affirmations. The two things I really focus on is out of my house and out of my head. And I know that's broad, but I think we get into our heads way too much. We jump into our time machines. We're rarely in the present. And also, the stuff that we think about and tell ourselves are mostly untrue and negative. So we're living with our cognitive distortions. And most of what we're thinking about, we thought about yesterday. So now we're living in the past, And so getting out of your head and also getting out of your house. And that means to go and engage and go live, And I know right now with the pandemic, it's difficult to leave your house, but it doesn't matter if it's a hike. I go on a daily motorcycle ride. I make sure I go get my workout in. For some, it's meditation, it's surfing. Things that allow you to feel and drop into your body, I think, is imperative.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show. In fact, I just came back from my run and I try to do it every day. It's either running about 1.5 miles or playing tennis outside every day, getting some fresh air, vitamin D, sunlight. But talking about going out, you also write about fatherhood, and I'm guessing your target market is men, but you talk about the importance of men to spending time with their boys and going out with, or sorry, not with, when I say their boys, I mean their friends, their guy friends. Yeah. Well, that's important too. If they have children, they should go out with their children. But you talk about how important it is for men to go out with their male friends. Why is that so important to mental health and relationships?
That comes from my own story, where I was obsessed with just finding, quote unquote, the one and investing in a partnership. And then I didn't care about friends. I spent no time investing with male friends, and also growing up in locker rooms, you're just very competitive. I thought it was a waste of time. You have your person that you choose to love, and then you go build something. It wasn't until my divorce I realized, wow, like if male friends are actually important and they're going to sharpen you. And I started to sit down and have conversations with my guy friends over crepes and coffee, and we started to get vulnerable and just talk about our struggles in life. And I was like, oh, this is emotional milk. This is something that I never had, and then I found the value in that. I also learned by working in nonprofit with teenage addicts that we live in a fatherless nation. Dad was never either not around physically or emotionally not there. And so I think that we as men are thirsty for that, and we don't have role models other than people who are outside of self or on, TV and locker rooms. And then we end up with a warped definition of what a man looks like. So hanging out with your boys, I think, is really important and good for you.
Yeah, and I think by that same token, women hanging out with their girls, I think that's an important thing as well.
Yeah, and that's why when women go out to dance, they just want to dance. And, a lot of times when men go out to dance, they're looking to hook up. That's the difference.
You talk about going out to breakfast and crepes and talking deep thoughts with your friends. How did you broach that? Because a lot of guys, if they're like, hey, let's go out to brunch and talk about feelings, that's not going to go too well. How'd you do that?
Yeah. I don't think you could announce that you're going to talk about your feelings because then you'll be eating up by yourself.
Yeah.
I think partly it's age. I started to do that at 35, and I think men turn the corner around their 30s. It's different for every individual. But when you're in your 20s, I think it's much harder to do. For a 20-something-year-old man to be like, let's go eat crepes and talk about our feelings, that's not going to land well. But, if you're in your 30s and you're on a path of working on yourself and you want to create honest relationships and you want to kind of redefine what a man looks like, and if that is in you, then I think men would be open to it, and you do it by example. You don't do it by announcing. You just start talking about what you're struggling with and be vulnerable, show yourself. And then I think you'll be surprised that they will also not only hold that space, but share their story as well.
Well, I got to tell you, I spent my 20s, at least my mid to late 20s, until I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, going out with my boys every weekend, not eating crepes, but like you said, if you want to call it going out to dance, we'll call it that. And my life in a matter of 4.5 years is, I'm now married, living in a house with a baby boy, and I have not gone out with my boys, I think, in over a year. Like, that's how long it's been. Now, what do you think technology, text messages, these group chats, because we do have these boys group chats on like WhatsApp and GroupMe. Do you think text messages and even talking on the phone or FaceTime video are replacements for going out with the boys for the crepe?
No, I don't think they're like if this was a car, I think they're the extras, right? It's like sunroof and air conditioning and cruise control. I don't think it's the base model. I think the base model will always be in person. I think there's nothing better than the human exchange in person. But of course, we're busy, and there's technology. There's the pandemic. There are things that prevent us from seeing each other. So then we use them as tools. So like FaceTime, Zoom, and all of that. But I don't think those should replace the human engagement. In person. There's nothing better than in person.
Yeah, that made me, Race, you talking about that made me think of I don't know if y'all heard John Mulaney's bit where he talks about how once you get to be 30 or a little thereafter, it's like, see you on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I can't make Tuesday. How about I see you in 6 months and it doesn't matter? Because, time just kind of slows down and doesn't matter quite as much. How does your philosophy towards therapy differ from the kind of mainstream idea of therapy?
I think it started, and I'd never really meant to do this. I just was going through my own rebirth. And I started with a blog on Tumblr about 12 years ago called The Angry Therapist. I didn't think anyone would read it. And what I did was I used it as kind of a public journal to document my feelings and what I was going through. And what that did, I didn't know it at the time, was it humanized me. And so most therapists don't show themselves. Most therapists are neutral. And I understand why. But I went the other way, and I started to get very personal and show people who I was and what I was struggling with. And I've been doing that ever since. I've kind of swam too far to turn back, and I think it set a different tone. And from what I've gotten I think now with the new generation, they're more interested in who you are instead of the letters after your name. So I'm definitely not for everyone, but I started to meet people at the park. I never had an office on purpose. I met people at the coffee shop. I would do sessions in public, take them on walks and stuff like that. And so that was very unconventional, but they liked it because they saw me as human and not just someone on a chair with sporting wrinkle-free pants.
Yeah, I agree with your style, because one of the problems with I guess you can say, the service industry or the medical service industry is you go in, like you said, you sit on the couch, and then the timer is ticking. And after 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, whatever your session time is all right, you're out of here. And you can't get in touch with these people. They won't share their cell phone number. And it just becomes very transactional versus, do you really care about me as a patient and improving my situation and improving my mental health? So I'm a big fan of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, there's still boundaries. I still, you're paying for a period of time. You got to hold boundaries. I'm not hanging out with them and sharing beers. But yeah, I'm definitely more casual over clinical. It's just more honest with who I am.
How do you think the United States is doing in general with overcoming the stigma of therapy?
Man, I think I think it's better now because, like, with our parents, and I don't know how old you guys are, but with my parents, you don't go see a therapist unless you're crazy.
Same.
Yeah, and
we're
also
both millennials.
Oh, okay, yeah, and you also don't talk about it, right? And I think now therapy is a luxury, and people say my therapist all the time in public. We don't judge them, and so I think it's changing, and I think it's great. And also, wellness has become cool. Meditation and fitness and yoga, like, it's become commercialized. So that's never been the case, back when our parents were growing up. So I think all of that is really good. People are open to the conversation of being a better version of yourself.
One of the platforms that I loved, I'm not a Democrat by any means, but Andrew Yang ran for president a few years ago, and I was a fan of really a bunch of his policies. He's not your typical Democrat. We've talked on the show about the UBI, what he called the freedom dividend, but one of the policies that he ran on, which absolutely I think should be something that the government makes people do, he wanted every U.S. citizen to have one mandatory therapy session every year, whether you were married or not.
Right.
And the government would pay for it. And it would be mandatory. And you just go in, you have your session. I guess the therapist gives you a paper or something that says, okay, this person has done it. And I completely agree. His belief is this could have widespread impacts that we don't see in front of us. We're always talking, okay, let's spend more money, let's Medicare for all, let's do this, let's do that. But we never think about the ripple effect that something like this could have on society as a whole. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it should be more than one. It's like the $600 stimulus check, where I don't know how much one session would do, but I think that's a great start. And I love that he's making that important and a priority, your mental health. You
came out with an episode. I believe you host your own podcast. What is your podcast called?
The Angry Therapist.
The Angry Therapist. Okay, so to all our listeners, check out the Angry Therapist podcast. You could just go on iTunes or any other podcasting platform. But you had an entire episode called Peeing in the Shower. So tell us, why is peeing in the shower a problem?
Yeah, it's not a problem if your partner doesn't mind. You could write your name on the wall, go at it. So this came from a personal story. If your partner, and I was in a heterosexual marriage at the time, and she said, don't pee in the shower. I don't like it. I could smell it. It's gross. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm not doing it. And because I thought she had no way of knowing and forgot that women have a heightened sense of smell, I would pee all the time. And so it wasn't really about peeing in the shower. It was about cracking trust, right? And so she knew I was doing it, and I would lie in front of her face. And I said I wouldn't. And then so what she would think is he also now feeding the dog under the table? Where is he going after work? Like it cracks the trust in a relationship container. And so that was my point, using peeing in the shower as an example, since we could all relate to it on a certain level.
Gotcha. Very good. And final question. It seems like your divorce had a huge impact. You wouldn't have done any of this,
Yeah,
the books,
yeah.
the blog. What was it about that marriage that just really got you down and inspired you to do all this?
Yeah, it didn't just get me down, it cut me in my knees. It forced me to grow up. I was a child. My divorce was an act break. It wasn't a new chapter. So I kind of left with nothing. So I had no money. I had no friends. I had no sense of self. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. But the thing is, when you start from that low, when you start there, there's up is the only way. Like there's nowhere else to go. And so that was kind of my rock bottom. But at the same time, it was one of the most important things that repositioned me to find meaning and my voice and a sense of, and purpose and all of that stuff.
Yeah, really good. The Angry Therapist, John Kim. Check out his books on Amazon. His new book is called Single on Purpose, Redefine Everything, Find Yourself First. The website is theangrytherapist.com. And there's also tat-lab.com. He's the co-founder of the Tat Lab, tat-lab.com. And he's also the co-founder of JRNI Coaching. That's jrni.co, jrni.co. John Kim, thanks so much for joining us on the Work From Home show. Any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners or anything else you want to promote?
No, I just want to say as a reminder to anyone listening that every part of your story will be used. I think we're so focused on ripping out chapters, and I understand we've been through things that have been traumatic, and especially 2020. But know that your story is the most valuable thing you will ever own, and all parts will be used.
How old were you when you got married and when you got divorced?
29 when I was married, 35 when I got divorced. Yeah.
So you did have to start. It's not like getting married young and getting back out there. You had to start a new life again in your mid 30s.
Yeah, I'm 87 now, but I'm Asian, so people can't really tell how old I am. But it's been a long ride. But yeah, thank you guys for helping me create this dialogue. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, John Kim. And to all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. Email is hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Leave us ratings on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, whatever podcasting platform you use. And until next time, keep on working from home.